Okay, let's unpack this. We've got some truly fascinating source material today that really challenges how we typically think about building brands.
Definitely.
And it all starts with this quote that, well, it immediately grabbed my attention. The strongest brands don't just own a message, they own a moment again and again.
That single line just flips the script, doesn't it? It suggests there's this whole dimension missing from, standard brand strategy conversations.
Yeah, something beyond just your logo or your mission statement or even who you're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The source argues you can have all of that perfectly in place. Your positioning is sharp, visual identity consistent, your voice is clear, and your brand can still feel weak or just, well, plain forgettable.
Right. And the core problem they point to, overlooking one absolutely fundamental dimension.
And that dimension, the source posits, is time.
Time. Yeah. We're so used to thinking about competing for shelf space or screen time, maybe mental space. But this perspective says the real competition is in temporal relevance.
Temporal relevance. So the battlefield isn't just minds or markets anymore.
It's time itself. That's the argument.
So it's not just what your brand is or who it's for, but how long it intends to matter. This idea is what the source introduces as temporal branding.
It's a shift, isn't it? From seeing a brand as this static thing to a dynamic calibration based on its intended speed and lifespan.
And for this deep dive, our mission is pretty clear. Unpack this concept and the framework it gives us.
Let's do it.
All right, so if time is this crucial dimension, how do we actually, segment or design for it?
Well, the source proposes that beyond the usual demographics and psychographics, the who and the what, there's a critical third dimension when your brand is most
They
relevant.
call this time segmentation.
Yeah, time segmentation, and they really emphasize its importance with a pretty bold statement. In branding, timing isn't everything. It's the only thing.
Wow, okay. That's hard to ignore.
It is.
It really forces you to ask some fundamental questions you might not have considered. Like, is your brand built for a fleeting trend? Or is it meant to resonate for generations?
Does it need to move at the speed of culture, keep up with everything, or should it deliberately stand apart, stand still almost?
Is its main fight for attention happening on the For You page right now? Or is it aiming for the history books, like way down the line?
And temporal branding is about integrating that timing not just into a single campaign, but like into the core design of the brand itself.
Okay, so how do you make that practical?
To make this practical, the source introduces a model, the 330-300 rule.
The 330-300 rule. Okay, this feels like the core engine of this thinking. A practical way to categorize and, I guess, build brands based on how long they're meant to last.
Exactly. Their intended life or impact cycle. The immediate now, the near future, and the truly enduring. It gives us three distinct categories.
Based on speed and duration. So where do we start? The fastest.
Precisely. Let's start with the fastest. First up, the 3-second brands, or flash brands.
Flash brands.
Right.
Right, and the quote from the source here is key. Attention is currency. Flash brands are built to spend it fast.
Their singular goal is instant attention. In a world saturated with content, they're engineered for immediate, visceral impact. Think visual, reactive.
Optimized for platforms where speed and, scroll stopping power are everything.
Totally. Their characteristics scream now, built for virality, reacting instantly to microtrends. They often live and die entirely within the feeds of TikTok, X, Instagram, places like that.
So examples would be like a tweet that just explodes for a day.
Yeah, that or those rapid AI-generated product drops that pop up and then just disappear. Or hyper-specific limited edition merch tied to something happening right now.
The risk is obvious, though.
Absolutely. They burn brightly but flame out almost instantly. Longevity just isn't part of the plan.
Okay, so that's the blink and you miss it speed. What about brands built to last a bit longer, maybe through a specific trend or a season?
That brings us to 30-day brands. The source calls them Fad Brands.
Fad Brands. And the quote for these is a great warning. Ride the wave, but don't mistake it for the tide.
Oh, I like that too. It's about consciously riding something temporary, right?
Exactly. Their goal is to sustain attention over a trend cycle, maybe a specific cultural wave or a seasonal moment.
Right. Their design has to be responsive, agile. They are inherently campaign-based. Their value is tied entirely to their timing, not to any sense of being timeless.
They sort of hop onto things,
Yeah.
like the latest aesthetic trend or maybe a specific holiday season.
Yeah, think fashion capsule collections, those pumpkin spice lattes that show up every fall, or limited time fast food items.
Or merch tied to whatever TV show or movie is huge right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The risk there is that the wave crashes, or just everyone else jumps on it, and suddenly you're irrelevant or just lost in the noise. Oversaturation.
Okay, so we have the super fast 3-second, the temporary 30-day.
Hmm.
What happens when we push that timeline out significantly, like really long term?
Right. Beyond a trend cycle to something built to endure for centuries. That's the long game. 300-year brands, the legacy brands.
Legacy brands. The source calls them legends, quoting, "Legends aren't made overnight, they're made over eras."
Their objective is the polar opposite of flash brands. It's about building enduring myth, deep trust, often over generations.
So their design principle has to be different. Archetypal. Timeless.
Timeless and deliberately slow. Evolution is careful, incremental, almost glacial sometimes. They are steeped in deep symbolism, heritage, and they're incredibly consistent.
You can feel the weight of history with these brands.
Definitely. The source points to classic examples: Rolex, Harvard University, Hermes, Mercedes-Benz.
Even national brands like Japan or France are mentioned as operating on this kind of timescale.
Exactly. Now, the risk for these is different, of course. It's becoming completely fossilized, just outdated and irrelevant if they resist necessary evolution at all.
So you have these three very different speeds, these different sort of destinies, and the source highlights that a really common but often overlooked cause of brand failure is just getting that speed wrong.
Yes, they call it temporal mismatch.
Temporal mismatch.
And it's summed up perfectly with the quote, "Your brand may be brilliant, just not at the right speed."
That makes sense. Mismatch is trying to be a flash brand when you need to be legacy, or the other way around.
Exactly. Like trying to stretch a viral, 3-second stunt into a full sustained 30-day marketing campaign.
It just doesn't have the legs.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the depth or structure.
Or conversely, trying to apply the heavy, serious, almost sacred tone of a 300-year legacy brand to some quick, disposable product designed for short-term buzz.
It just feels off. Completely wrong.
Or maybe building a brand that could have long-term potential, but the company keeps chasing every fleeting trend, which just damages its own stability and credibility.
That makes so much sense. It's not about speed being inherently bad.
Yeah.
It's about clarity. As the source says later, speed isn't the enemy of branding. Confusion is.
Right. Your strategic branding has to start by honestly asking, how long does this brand intend to matter? What's its tempo?
And this is where the framework gets really innovative, right?
Yes.
To help brands actually do this, to see their temporal position and figure out where they should be.
Yes, the source introduces the Time Calibration Canvas framework.
Ah, the canvas. This isn't just theory. It's presented as this practical tool.
Yeah, a visual tool to see where your brand currently sits based on its speed and its connection to culture, and then calibrate toward its ideal position.
Looking at the examples they plot on the canvas really makes it concrete. You see Rolex plotted firmly in the slow culture, long-term corner.
Right. And then TikTok memes are obviously fast culture, short-term burst over on the other side.
Nike is shown as sort of moderate speed, but with that clear, long-term, almost legacy-oriented positioning.
Yeah, playing a longer game. And a fashion drop is fast culture, but maybe medium-term trend, not just instant flash.
Red Bull is interesting too, moderately fast cultural speed, but with an evolving long-term strategy behind it.
Mm-hmm. And those hyper-fast AI-generated trend brands. Fast culture, blink and you miss it, lifespan, bottom left corner, basically.
It immediately makes you think about your own brand, doesn't it? Or brands you interact with. Where does your brand sit on that canvas right now?
And maybe more importantly, is that really where it needs to be to achieve its goals?
Because this temporal understanding, this calibration, it has ripple effects across everything you do with the brand.
Absolutely. The source highlights how understanding your brand's intended tempo impacts marketing, tailoring campaign durations and messaging properly.
It dictates your design choices too. The aesthetics, the symbols, the packaging need to match the intended speed.
And your brand voice, a flash brand, can be chaotic, spontaneous, maybe even a bit messy, right? While a legacy brand needs to sound considered, stable, authoritative.
It shapes your innovation strategy as well. How quickly you iterate, how fundamental are the changes you make.
And crucially, it adds this whole new dimension to segmentation. Are your customers looking for a quick hit, a seasonal identity, or like a lifelong relationship with the brand? Segmenting by temporal expectations.
It really underscores that getting the tempo right isn't just a nice to have.
No, it's foundational. It avoids that confusion they mentioned earlier.
Which brings us back to that core closing thought from the source. It's so simple, but profound, I think. Great branding isn't timeless, it's timeful.
Timeful, I like
Yeah.
that. It's not about escaping time, but about understanding and mastering your place within it. Designing with time as a key ingredient.
And the final provocative sentence really lands the central call to action. To future-proof your brand, start by calibrating its tempo.
It gives you a totally new lens, doesn't it? To view the brands you interact with every day and maybe the ones you're involved in building, can you feel their speed? Do they feel timeful?
Definitely something to ponder. We hope this deep dive gives you, our listeners, a powerful new perspective on brand relevance in a world that's constantly shifting gears.